The sun hung low over the Western Front on a crisp autumn day, October 12, 1944. The roar of the Luftwaffe engines filled the air as German pilots in their Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s swarmed into formation, their eyes scanning the skies above the vast European expanse. Below them, the battered landscape of France lay, its towns and fields scarred by the ruthless grind of the Allied advance. For months, the skies had been a chaotic battlefield, with both sides losing hundreds of aircraft in desperate dogfights that seemed to stretch endlessly across the horizon. Yet on this particular day, something was different. Something in the air felt heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding that no one could quite articulate, but everyone could feel. As the German pilots tightened their formations, eyes narrowed against the glaring sun, they saw it. A shadow loomed in the distance, a menace that seemed to cut through the very fabric of the air. At first, it was a mere flicker, just another speck on the horizon. But then it grew larger, clearer and unmistakable. American P-51 Mustangs, gliding effortlessly through the sky, their distinctive long fuselages and sleek wings cutting through the air with the precision of a predator closing in on its prey. The sight was as chilling as it was inevitable. In that moment, the German pilots knew. They had seen the Allies' new weapon, the one that would end the Luftwaffe's dominance and forever alter the balance of power in the skies. The P-51 Mustang had arrived, and with it came the end of an era. It was not just another Allied fighter, it was the harbinger of doom. For months, the German Luftwaffe had been struggling to regain its footing against the overwhelming air superiority of the Allies. Their numbers had dwindled, their morale shattered by the constant Allied bombardments, and now, as they stared into the depths of the sky, they saw the true face of their demise. The P-51 Mustang was no ordinary aircraft. It was a symbol of American ingenuity. Designed and built by engineers who were determined to create the ultimate weapon for long-range escort missions. Armed with a powerful Merlin engine, the Mustang could outrun, outclimb, and outfight virtually any enemy aircraft it encountered. Its range was unmatched, allowing it to accompany bombers deep into enemy territory and return home without hesitation. The German pilots knew that this was not just a threat to their survival, it was the death knell for their entire air force. As the P-51s closed in, the Germans scrambled to engage. But the P-51s were fast, too fast. The American pilots, with their superior tactics and air superiority, easily outmaneuvered the Luftwaffe pilots, picking them off one by one with deadly precision. The German fighters, heavily outclassed and outnumbered, began to fall from the sky like autumn leaves in a storm. The once feared Luftwaffe, which had struck terror into the hearts of Allied forces just a year earlier, now found itself in a desperate struggle for survival. In the chaos of the dogfight, the German pilots could hear the radio crackling with orders, but their voices were tinged with panic and disbelief. The Mustang pilots seemed to appear out of nowhere, always one step ahead, always out of reach. The few remaining German fighters, now scattered and confused, struggled to keep up. But it was clear that the tide had irrevocably shifted. For the German pilots, the realization was dawning, slow and painful. The Luftwaffe was no longer the apex predator in the skies. The P-51 Mustang had come to symbolize everything that was wrong with their position. An unstoppable force, a relentless pursuit of victory by the Allies, and a harbinger of doom for their homeland. It wasn't just the aircraft itself that was terrifying. It was the undeniable truth that the Allies now had the means to strike at the very heart of Germany. There was no escape from the skies above, and no sanctuary on the ground below. As the fight raged on, the German pilots fought with the grim determination of men who knew they were on the verge of defeat. They dove, they climbed, and they executed evasive maneuvers, but it was all in vain. One by one, their aircraft were shot down, their engines burning and smoking as they plummeted to the earth below. The sound of their screams was drowned out by the deafening roar of the Mustang engines as they tore through the air, cutting down the German aircraft with ruthless efficiency. By the time the dogfight had ended, the sky was littered with the wreckage of the Luftwaffe planes, their twisted bodies a testament to the superiority of the P-51. The pilots who had once commanded the skies now lay in the ruins of their aircraft, their dreams of victory shattered beyond repair. The Germans had lost the battle, but more than that, they had lost the war. The Mustang had become a symbol of Allied strength, and the Luftwaffe pilots knew that their days in the air were numbered. The realization settled in like a cold weight on the hearts of the remaining German pilots. Their once mighty air force, feared across Europe, had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. The P-51 Mustang had marked the beginning of the end. It was no longer a question of if Germany would fall, but when. And as the sun began to set on that fateful October day, the pilots of the Luftwaffe knew that they had seen the beginning of their downfall. The skies were no longer theirs to command. The Allies had won the air, and with it, the war. In the days following the devastating dogfights over France, the full weight of the Luftwaffe's collapse became evident. For years, the German pilots had dominated the skies of Europe. But now, the reality of their destruction sank in. The P-51 Mustang had broken through the Luftwaffe's defensive lines and shattered the very concept of air superiority that Germany had held for over half a decade. But what made the Mustang so effective? And how did it become the weapon that turned the tide of the war? The answer lay in the aircraft's innovative design, engineering, and the strategy behind its development. The Mustang was more than just a fast, agile fighter. It was a meticulously engineered machine built to meet the specific needs of the Allied air forces. In 1940, the British government had approached North American Aviation with a request to design an aircraft that could escort bombers deep into enemy territory. They needed a long-range fighter that could protect Allied bombers from the deadly German interceptors. The result was the P-51 Mustang, a fighter unlike any that had come before it. The secret to the Mustang's success was its combination of speed, endurance, and firepower. Powered by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Mustang had an incredible top speed of 437 miles per hour and a range of over 1,000 miles, far surpassing any other fighter of the time. The engine's supercharger allowed the P-51 to operate at high altitudes, while its aerodynamic design made it incredibly fast and nimble at low altitudes. The aircraft's large wings and sleek fuselage contributed to its excellent stability and maneuverability, making it an ideal platform for both long-range escort missions and close combat. But the Mustang's design was not just a stroke of luck. It was the result of countless hours of research, development, and testing by a dedicated team of engineers, led by men like Ed Heinemann and James H. Dutch Kindleberger. The aircraft's production was overseen by factories like the one at Willow Run, Michigan, where Ford Motors, a major player in American manufacturing, produced the Mustangs on an assembly line that could churn out more than 500 planes per month. The production lines were a testament to American industrial might, producing aircraft at a scale that the Germans could not match. The Mustang's most significant advantage, however, was its long range. This allowed it to accompany the heavy bombers of the 8th Air Force all the way to the heart of Germany and back. Prior to the P-51's introduction, Allied bombers had been vulnerable to German interceptors, particularly the powerful Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf 190. The bombers needed fighter escorts to defend them, but the escorts were often too far behind or too slow to make a difference. The P-51 changed that. With its long-range fuel tanks, it could fly alongside the bombers from England to Germany and back without needing to refuel. The B-17 Flying Fortress bombers, once sitting ducks for the Luftwaffe, were now protected by the P-51s, which could engage German fighters before they even had a chance to strike. The impact of the P-51 Mustang was felt almost immediately. In early 1944, when the Mustang first entered combat over Europe, it was clear that the Luftwaffe had underestimated the capabilities of the Allies. German pilots, who had once feared the P-47 Thunderbolt and the P-38 Lightning, were now facing a new and far more formidable foe. The P-51 pilots, who had trained extensively in the United States and were equipped with cutting-edge technology, quickly adapted to the new tactics required to fight the Germans. They flew in tight formations, relying on their superior speed and maneuverability to outmaneuver their German counterparts. The Luftwaffe's top pilots, like Werner Mölders and Adolf Galland, could only watch in disbelief as their aircraft were picked off one by the Mustang's deadly firepower. The turning point came in June 1944, during the Allied invasion of Normandy. The P-51s played a pivotal role in the success of the invasion, providing crucial air support and eliminating the Luftwaffe's ability to defend the skies. As Allied bombers began their raids over German industrial centers and military installations, the P-51s tore through the air, engaging German fighters and leaving them no place to hide. By the summer of 1944, the Luftwaffe was on the verge of collapse. The German pilots who had once ruled the skies now found themselves outclassed and outnumbered, unable to stem the tide of American bombers and fighters. In one of the most decisive battles of the war, the German pilots tried desperately to defend the skies over the Third Reich. On January 1, 1945, the Americans launched a series of raids against key German targets. The Luftwaffe responded by throwing everything they had left into the battle, launching wave after wave of fighters in a last-ditch effort to turn the tide. But the P-51s were ready. As the German planes engaged, the Mustangs cut through the formations, picking off targets with ruthless precision. The Germans tried to regroup, but their efforts were futile. The P-51s had gained total dominance in the skies, and the Luftwaffe could not match their firepower, speed, or endurance. In the aftermath of the battle, the toll on the Luftwaffe was devastating. Hundreds of German aircraft were destroyed, and their pilots, once the elite of the world's air forces, found themselves hopelessly outclassed. The P-51 Mustang had not only crushed the morale of the Luftwaffe, but it had also destroyed the myth of German air superiority. The Mustang had become the symbol of the end of an era, the moment when the balance of power in the skies shifted irreparably. The Luftwaffe was finished, and with it, the last hopes of Germany's aerial defense. As the war drew to a close, the legacy of the P-51 Mustang became clear. It had not only altered the course of World War II, but it had also redefined the role of the fighter aircraft in modern warfare. The P-51 was the ultimate expression of American ingenuity and industrial might, a weapon that changed the very nature of aerial combat. For the German pilots who had once ruled the skies, the arrival of the P-51 Mustang was a stark reminder that no matter how great their aircraft or tactics, they could not outmatch the relentless ingenuity of the Allied forces. The skies had been lost, and with it, their homeland. As the P-51 Mustang soared over the decimated remnants of the Luftwaffe, its impact on the war stretched far beyond the skies of Europe. The Mustang had not just won battles or shot down enemy aircraft. It had rewritten the rules of air combat and shifted the entire strategic landscape. With its superior design, range, and firepower, the P-51 was no longer just a fighter aircraft. It had become a symbol of American dominance and ingenuity, a devastatingly efficient tool in the Allies' arsenal. Yet, the true extent of its influence on the course of the war, the morale of the German forces, and the post-war world was not immediately apparent. It would take time, both on the battlefield and off, to understand the far-reaching consequences of its arrival. By the fall of 1944, the Luftwaffe was a shell of its former self. Once a feared force capable of challenging any air superiority, it now scrambled to defend its remaining territories. The German pilots, faced with mounting losses and the overwhelming presence of the P-51 in the skies, began to experience not only physical defeat, but also a psychological one. It wasn't just the sheer firepower of the Mustang that devastated them. It was the realization that the Allies had cracked their air defense strategy. For months, German pilots had been accustomed to intercepting enemy bombers and fighters, using tactics that once struck terror into the hearts of their adversaries. Now those very tactics were being used against them. As P-51s swept across Europe, their presence became a harbinger of doom. To the German soldiers below, the sound of the Mustang's engines was as ominous as the roar of the bombers they escorted. The Luftwaffe's ability to defend the skies had eroded completely, leaving the German military exposed to the full force of the Allied aerial assault. The loss of air superiority was a devastating blow to the morale of the Wehrmacht. The ability to call on air support was no longer a given. German commanders, once confident in their tactical flexibility, now found themselves vulnerable. The P-51 had stripped them of that critical advantage, and with it, the belief that victory was within reach. The true cost of the Mustang's dominance was revealed in the operations that followed. The Allied strategic bombing campaign had already caused significant damage to German infrastructure and industry. But the P-51, with its extended range and relentless precision, allowed the Allies to press their advantage deep into Germany's heart. For the first time, American bombers could strike German factories, refineries, and military installations without the constant threat of interception. The Germans had once relied on their air superiority to shield their home turf. Now, they were powerless to stop the bombardment of their most vital industrial centers. The P-51 had effectively neutralized Germany's ability to fight back in the air, leaving their land forces exposed and vulnerable. By the time the Allies closed in on Berlin, the Luftwaffe's ability to resist had all but evaporated. German pilots, who had once taken great pride in their craft, now found themselves unable to compete with the sheer technological superiority of the Mustang. The P-51 had pushed them to the brink of extinction, and for many of the Luftwaffe pilots, there was no honor in dying at the hands of an enemy they could not even touch. Post-war interrogations of German pilots revealed a deep sense of disillusionment. The air war, once their domain, had slipped from their grasp without warning. They had fought with determination, but in the end, they were powerless against the relentless march of Allied technology and tactics. The Mustang's legacy was not limited to its role in the destruction of the Luftwaffe. It was a key factor in shaping the post-war world order. The war had exposed the vulnerabilities of air forces around the world, and the Mustang's performance marked the beginning of a new era in aviation. With its proven capabilities, it set the stage for the development of modern jet fighters and the emergence of the United States as the undisputed leader in air power. The lessons learned from the P-51's design and deployment influenced not only military aviation but also the development of civilian aircraft in the post-war years. The principles of speed, range, and firepower would define air superiority for decades to come. As the war ended, the P-51 Mustang's role in the Allied victory became clear. It was more than just a weapon of war. It was a symbol of the industrial power, technological innovation, and determination that had fueled the Allied effort. The German defeat in the air was not just a military loss, it was a psychological blow to the very core of their war machine. The Luftwaffe, which had once been the pinnacle of air combat, was now a shadow of its former self, its pilots demoralized and its planes scattered across the skies. The P-51 Mustang had been the key to their undoing, a reminder that no matter how great the power of an enemy, it could be overcome through innovation, determination, and the will to succeed. As the war drew to a close and the world looked ahead to the post-war era, the lessons of the P-51 Mustang remained etched in the minds of those who had witnessed its impact. In the years that followed, the legacy of the Mustang would be felt in the evolution of air combat, in the development of modern military aircraft, and in the ongoing arms race of the Cold War. But perhaps the most important lesson was a simple one. The sky, once dominated by the Luftwaffe, now belonged to the Allies, and it was a lesson that would endure for generations to come, as the world entered a new age of warfare, one defined by speed, technology, and the unrelenting pursuit of victory.